My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma to speak with John Haws, and this is part of our Oklahoma 100-Year Life project, so thank you for having us today. Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born at Goteville, Oklahoma, while my dad was the Indian agent at the Rainy Mountain Indian School, just south of Goteville. I was christened John Francis Haws, Jr. I took the name of Francis until I graduated from high school and left home. Then I took John because my father was John. Then, how far?
When were you born?
In September 10th, 1914.
1914. And did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 2 brothers, 2 sisters.
And where were you in the line?
I'm the baby.
You're the baby. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was an Indian agent with the Department of the Interior at Goteville, and then we moved a lot of times. We moved to Colony when I was about 3 months old. We stayed there until I was 4. We moved to Kingfisher, Oklahoma. We stayed there for a couple of years. Then we moved to the Fallon Indian Reservation out at Fallon, 10 miles out of Fallon, Nevada, and was there for about almost 2 years. I have happy moments from every place. Then we moved back to Carnegie, and that was where we stayed so much. And about that time, they changed my dad's title from Indian agent to field clerk to make it a little bit more sophisticated. And then life begins. But all the time growing up, I had friends. We played. As I got older, along about the age of 14, my brother lived at the Kingfisher and was in the sand and gravel business. So in the summertime, I'd go help him. And that was back when I didn't have motorized or trucks to use. You used a team. The wagon had 6-inch timbers with a horn so you could turn it and dump the sand out the bottom. One evening, I was taking the horses to the barn, big old clumsy horses, Pat and Mike, and they kicked me right here, lift me over the fence. That sounds something, but the fence was only this high. And my sister-in-law, they thought that they'd kicked me in the stomach. Poured liniment on me. Well, you know where it ran to. Ooh! If you haven't. But I've moved forward there. I've done a lot of things I was told not to do. Back when we were at Colony, and I was 3 years old, one Sunday evening, Dad went down to the barn to milk, I went with him, and like all children, they climb on tools, all kinds of everything that you can do like that. Well, my dad told me to stay off of it, but I climbed up on a disc. And a lot of people today don't even know what a disc is. But I slipped and fell, and I had a mark right here. They took me to the doctor, and back in those days, the only medicine you had was iodine. And they poured that on that, and I thought my head was going to burn off. Then, like I said, or maybe I haven't said it, but I've been blessed every day of my life. I've been watched over. I'll get into something else a little bit later on and tell you an experience that's unusual.
Okay. Well, where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school I was in the kindergarten at Kingfisher. I went when we lived in Fallon, Nevada. The Indian school was about from here to the street from our house. There was a duplex where the teacher lived on the other side. I wasn't able to go to that school. I rode a horse 5 miles to Stillwater, Nevada, by the road. But in the wintertime, when the slough wasn't bringing water down from the mountains, when the snow was melting, because everything was irrigated out there, I could cut through and go down this slough back up on the other side, and it was only about 3.5 miles. But there wasn't any fences. It was just sagebrush and a trail that had been used for others before me. So we could go across there and down in this and up over to school. But then I meant to go on the long route. 2 of my friends would meet me down on the next section of the corner, and we'd all ride to school together. At this little settlement, there was the doctor, his wife was the nurse. There was a little Baptist mission with 2 missionaries, my dad, mother, me, and the school teacher. And all of the kids that went to school there, they were my friends, and I played with them all the time.
Well, what would you do with your horse while you were in class?
Tie him up out of the side. And while I was there, one afternoon, all the kids were watching a foal being born. We got first class
Science education.
education right there.
So when you moved away from there, where would you go to school? Take us on through your school.
Well, I came to Carnegie, and there's a lot of life ahead of that, behind that,
Well,
that I can tell you about.
tell me if you want to. Go to it.
Well, along about 1926, there was an oil boom up in Pawnee County. My dad had made the run for the Cherokee Strip, and at Pawnee, north of Pawnee, called Finchum, now was where he homesteaded. And there was a little oil boom. Pawnee Bill came down and stayed 2 days trying to talk my dad into selling the farm, but Dad never did go in and give up. But anyway, my folks, they had always been furnished a house while my dad was working for the government. They built a new house there at Carnegie. And one of the things next to us was on the next corner was a cobblestone filling station. Do you know what cobblestone is?
Oh, I know what well, go ahead.
They're round stones about like this. They're more or less down in the Wichita Mountains. I looked for it a couple of years when I went out there, but it's a Dairy Queen now. All different. But on this new house, everything was cold. We had a room down in the basement that they dumped the coal in. After we got natural gas and it was all cleaned out, that was my workshop. I put a workbench in there and liked to fool with woodworking. Then I still have my 3 chisels, wood chisels, my draw knife, my brace and bit that I used making different things. But before I was that old, when I was younger, in grade school, 2 of my friends that I played with all the time, we were cowboys. I was Ken, I just lost his name. But anyway, one of them was Hoot Gibson, and another one, I don't remember. But the other 2 boys were both well-known pediatricians. One at Muskogee and one up in the state of Washington. And here I ended up pushing a pencil. But we had a lot of time, a lot of fun. I was sneaky. The grade school was 2 blocks up the hill. And I had a sweet tooth. So I taught my mother out of a couple of pennies. Instead of going to school, I'd backtrack and go to Goslin's variety store. That was Ace Goslin. That was the G of TG&Y.
Okay.
And I'd get 2 or 3 pennies worth of chocolate stars. That was my favorite. Now I gotta go back to school and share it with the other kids.
Was this in Carnegie?
That was in Carnegie. I spent more time in Carnegie most of my life. So I'm a full-bred Okie.
Is that where you graduated high school?
I graduated from high school. In fact, that's my picture. There were only 33 of us in the class.
No,
1933.
33.
Well, what was the Depression like? Because that was around the Depression
The
years.
Depression, as soon as the Depression hit, The banks closed. That made it hard on farmers because they didn't have the money. But since Dad had a government check, the grocery store, that was the first time that they ever put charge tickets. They'd have a charge book. You go in, you'd buy your groceries, and they'd list everything. Then when you got your paycheck, got some money, you could pay it off. And I learned something the other day when after my dad died. I was executor, and I have a stack over here of things that he used. He was a record keeper. You'd think he was a bookkeeper. Because money was so tight, he kept record of every nickel. I've got some records over there that I'm keeping, but if he spent a dime for a loaf of bread, he wrote it down, and then at the end of the month he'd find out how much he spent and how much he had. He was a farmer. When he was in the service, he let the farm rent it out on a crop share, so he had a little bit of income there. But when you get a check for $65 a month, it doesn't go very far. And I don't think he was making that much when the Depression hit. Money hasn't been like this. And now they think nothing of giving state officials too much. I won't say.
He was in World War I, your father?
No, he was too old. My brother was in World War I.
Well, when he was in the service, you said. So what?
Huh?
You said while he was in the service.
Indian service.
Indian service. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
My brother was in the First World War. He was a cook, was always stationed in Kansas. He didn't get to go over and fight.
Well, when you got out of high school, what did you do?
Well, while I was still in high school, J.C. Penney Company opened a store there. There were a bunch of boys besides me trying to get a job. There was the manager, the assistant manager, the bookkeeper, and a woman clerk. Then I got the job helping to stock the store, and then I was a clerk. For $1 a day. That was after I got my raise.
Oh my God.
We worked 8 hours a day. During cotton season, we'd work 12 to 14 hours a day. You've heard of the NRA?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it came along and restricted us to 60 hours a week. Then later they cut it to. One Saturday my boss came to me, said, "Francis, you've always put too much time in it. You can go home." That was at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, our busiest days. Before that, while I was in high school, I got out and picked cotton. where you pull the cotton out of the bolls.
Hard work.
Hard work. Drag an 18-foot canvas bag, and you got a penny a pound for the cotton.
What was the most you picked in one day?
I don't remember. I spent it.
Well, why would you work longer during cotton picking season at the store?
Well, that was before.
Okay. Okay.
After I went to that. Then, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. After I graduated, I went up to Oklahoma A&M, that little college over here at Stillwater, and with two other boys. We got partially enrolled, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just signed up for freshman classes. I went to the JCPenney store since I had previously worked for Penny. I told them I needed a part-time job, so I got a job. They said, we'll find you. People that had the store over at Masham, there in Pawnee County, they lived in Stillwater, and they had a big house, and they rented rooms out to the male students. So I made arrangements to stay at their house. So there I was, partially enrolled. I had a job and a place to stay. I went back home. Then one of those hotshot salesmen for Hills Business University called on me and sold me on going to Hills because I could get out in the business world earlier than going 4 years at Oklahoma A&M. So I went to Hills Business University.
And when did you graduate from there?
In 35.
So 2 years, yeah.
Was that in Oklahoma City, Hills
That's
Business
in
School?
Oklahoma City, 619 West Main. I think it's still there. Anyway.
Well, did you, in terms of marriage, were you married during that time, or?
Well, there at Hills Business University, we had big classrooms. I was taking the accounting section, and my boss told me there at Carnegie, he says, Francis, you're too much of an outdoorsman. You'll never work in an office. But I did. Anyway, we had these desks, full-size adult desks, two of them together. Mine was number 266. And one day there was a girl walking down the aisle. She got next to me and dropped her pencil. Well, I had to reach over and get it. When I looked up, I saw those birdie blue eyes. She was going with the state president of the DeMolay, and he asked her, said, do you know John Haws? She said, no, and he said, well, look him up. Well, she did. She got me.
What was her name?
Ruth Wanda Bookout.
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 It's an unusual last name. Bookout.
All right. She was from Hartshorn. Her dad and her brother had a garage and distributorship for McAllister in that area of the Mid-Continent Petroleum.
Did you two ever go out on any dates?
Yes. The first date we had, I took her to a show, out to dinner. That's when you could go to a restaurant and they had the meals, family style. They kept bowls full of food. I think it was a quarter dinner. After that, we went to one of the shows there in Oklahoma City. On the way home, she said, "This has been the happiest birthday I've ever had." She said, "It's my birthday." I said, "Me too." She said, "I don't believe you." So, make a short story long, J.C. Penney Company opened in Oklahoma City, their first store. Well, I got a job helping set up the men's work clothes department. And I hurt my back trying to lift one of those dollies of clothes because the elevator wasn't quite level. And she went with me out to Carnegie on the bus and asked my mother about my birthday. And I said, "Yeah, that's right."
She still didn't believe you.
You shared the same birthday.
We have the same. She was 99 the day that I was 100. So on down the line, when we had my 100th birthday, I had a special cake baked for her. Wow. Her birthday.
And yours.
The ultimate question is, how did you pop the question to her? Did you do anything special?
I don't know. I think we just took it for granted. I don't think I had. See, life's been fun all my life.
Well, did you elope to get married or have a...
No. We wanted to get married on our birthdays, but she was working for an insurance company that didn't allow married women to work for the company. So she had to keep it quite still. We got married on Saturday before Labor Day. She had to work till 2 o'clock that afternoon. She hurried home, changed clothes. We already had the bags packed and everything. Preacher was late. We got married at St. Luke's, the old St. Luke's Methodist Church in Oklahoma City. A preacher from Carnegie, one of my friends there, I asked him to be our preacher. He married us there. He took us down to the depot after the sale. Oh, I had gotten Ruth a flowers or anything, and while we were waiting on him, I went to the flower shop down on the corner, and I couldn't get back. When I got back, they were waiting on me. Then we got on a train, went all the way to Fort Worth, took a bus back over to Dallas. It was at Texas Centennial. Got in there at 1 o'clock in the morning. Checked in at the hotel where I thought I was. They said, "We cancel your reservation." Now I'd had it for 3 weeks. Already promised. One of the company men down in Dallas had taken care of it for me. I said, "Well, we just got married. We had a train trip to Fort Worth. Now we're here on a bus. We couldn't get here any sooner. There was no way to tell you that we were closing in on it." So he started calling different hotels for vacancies. He didn't find any. So the last people that he had rented a room to, he excavated them, moved them out, and it had twin beds. So we pushed the beds together.
And what year was that?
Huh?
What year?
That was 1936.
36.
September 5th, 1936.
Mm.
And the next month, incidentally, I was working for Fruhoff Trailer Company. It's a hard name, Fruehauf. I hadn't learned how to spell it. I was office manager there in Oklahoma City. They were opening a branch in Tulsa. So I was transferred to Tulsa in October of 36. Well, here was Ruth working in Oklahoma City. I was working in Tulsa. One weekend, I drive my Model A over to Oklahoma City. And the next weekend, she gets a Oklahoma transportation bus back to Tulsa. We didn't like that. Finally, she said, "This has got to end." So the company was having a Christmas party, and she had let one of the girls that she worked with know that she was married. Mm. So they kind of surprised that they had little diploma-like things with our wedding date and everything at the place for a place marker. Anyway, when her boss opened his cards, "Why didn't you tell me? We could have kept it secret from the home office. I always keep you over here." I tell you, Last minute scream. Do you find many people this old that's had the fun I have?
No. So I take it she found a job in Tulsa and moved here?
Well, then, that's another story. In 1938, Fruhoff decided that they would close the factory branch here at Tulsa. We were out on the Charles Page Boulevard, across from Celia Clinton School, 2111 South Quanah. And I had a 2 weeks notice. While I was had that, my boss was letting me try to find another job. I had my application at 2 or 3 different employment agencies. I went to the typewriter place because I like mechanics. Wanted to learn how to service office machines. And I went to several of their other companies. I had about 7 or 8 places that kind of looked favorable. And then one afternoon, up popped National Tank Company. One of the employment agencies found out about it. So I called up my wife. I couldn't get her. She and the landlady were sitting out in the backyard. It was in February, sitting out in the backyard enjoying the sunshine. It was our apartment was down at 18th and Boston, right across the street from the old fire station that's still there. I finally called my boss, or I told my boss that I needed a ride out to National Tank Company. He says, "Where's that?" I said, "It's out on the Sand Springs Road, Sand Springs line." He said, "I'll take you out there." So we finally found the place. I went in, I met Frank Baker, the secretary and treasurer, because I was going to be working. It was an application for the accounting department. And I gave him my resume. He saw Hills Business University. He said, "I graduated there too. I know what they do." Well, there was about 7 or 8 other fellows that were applying for the same job as typist. He said, finally, he said, "We'll call someone in the next week or so." Got me out of bed the next morning. So I had to find my way out there. J.P. Walker was president, Cecil G. Wells was vice president, F.W. Baker secretary and treasurer. Well, Baker's the one that hired me. I park in J.P. Walker's parking place. So when he got there, someone came in and says, "John, you're going to have to go move your car." you're in Mr. Walker's place.
They didn't fire you though.
No. And there was a total of 5 of us in the accounting department, counting Mr. Baker, the secretary. Gus Wilde was a typist. And then I was the second male typist. John Calvert was what was his? And then Lloyd Taylor was paymaster. But John Calvert had something to do with personnel. I made the counting engineers in the accounting department. We had the secretary to meet people at the front door, one purchasing agent, the rest of them were engineers. So I made the 11th employee. And at one time, we had over 400 in one of our office buildings.
How long did you stay there?
Till 1980.
Retired.
January 1st.
Retired from there then.
Yeah.
Mm.
When I first started out, we typed, we entered, we had large sales record books. Oh, John Calvert was one that paid the bills. Anyway, we didn't have a credit department, so I got acquainted with some of the credit managers over at Frick Reed, Lucy Products, Schlumberger, all of the big oil supply companies. I got acquainted with them and started checking credit on some of our customers. Well, that was the beginning of the credit department. Finally, I was invited to join the group. So we had annual meetings. We traveled all over the country. We started out down at Lake Murray, then down to Dallas, Denver, Colorado Springs, and all like that. Well, in 1965, when National Tank Company sold out to Combustion Engineering, our officers elected the general counsel and me as officers. He was secretary, and I was assistant secretary. So I had full responsibility of the collection. And another story I'll tell you.
Did you get your own parking place when you got to become one of the?
Yeah, you might as well say that.
Okay, go
Because
to.
I was early bird. But the plant, it was out on Charles Page Boulevard, on the south side of the road. Our laboratory was to the big building in the back. Would you believe that motorboats used to go up and down Sand Springs road in front of our office, and logs this big around about chunks like this would float up next to our window outside the building when we had the floods. That was before we had the levees there on the Arkansas. Our tanks that were stored in the road across the street would get up and float. Now, where was I?
So you kind of, for your career, you worked in an office,
I was office all the time.
but you said that you were told that you were an outdoorsman. You would never have an indoor
That's
job.
what my boss told me.
Did you continue to do things outside of work, like be an outdoorsman, do outdoors type of activities?
Yes. I spent about 25 years in scouting.
What did you do in scouting? Were you a scoutmaster? Were you
Yes.
with the children, or?
I was 14 when I joined the Boy Scouts at Carnegie. In 1936, in the summer, there was a new troop being started at Oklahoma City. Troop 9, or it's either 9 or 41. I was only there till October, and I had to leave and come to Tulsa. Then my work at National Tank Company was pretty heavy. And I'd go back and work at night. One evening I was headed back to work down at 21st and Harvard. There were 2 Boy Scouts waiting for the bus. So I asked them where they were going. They said out Boston Avenue to troop meeting. I said, well, I belong to Boston Avenue. Hop in, I'll take you down there. My wife and I joined Boston Avenue in January of '37. We were charter members of the Young People's class, and when it disbanded, we were the only living couple. But anyway, getting back to scouting, I went in, saw what they were doing. First thing I knew, I was on the troop committee and assistant scoutmaster. Then in '44, I was made scoutmaster. And I was scoutmaster through 48. Then for 1 year, I was post advisor. That was for the seniors. Oh, it goes on and on and on.
Ever get the silver beaver?
Never did, and I think I figured out why. I was asked that question, and after I left Troop 20 as a post advisor, I remained on the troop committee. Then my son got old enough to be a Cub Scout. So up here at Lanier, he joined the Cub Scouts. Dick Brace was the Cub Master, and while he was there, one of the projects we had was this Statue of Liberty up at 19th and Harvard. The 3 scout troops at Eastside Christian Church Troop 53, 54, and 56, and Pac 12 raised the funds to pay for that. National Tank Company built the base, raised no, I take it back. Otis Snyder built the base. National Tank raised the statue with a gin pole truck. It was quite a celebration. Anyway, that statue had to stay in the little garage out here for 30 days while we were getting the rest of the money to pay for it. Then, first thing I knew, it was Cubmaster. Then, after Phil went to scouting, he didn't go back down to Boston Avenue Troop 20. He went over to Troop 54 at Eastside Christian because that's where his friends were going. And he was on the rifle team over there. He's been an active guy.
And Phil's your son?
That Phil?
Mm-hmm.
John Phillip.
Yep.
Now this, like I said before, we got a string of Johns and a few James mixed in between.
So scouting was a big part of your middle adult years then.
My middle adult, it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, first thing I knew, I was assistant scoutmaster of 54. Then, as he grew a little older, and in the meantime, was active as a neighborhood commissioner with several states, several areas, and at the last of it, to start with, there were two districts, the north and the south. It was the Tulsa Area Boy Scout Council. Now it's the Indian Nations. Jack Lawrence and Bob Garrison were the two main ones that I know about. They tried to get me to go to work for them, but about that time was when the war was going on. And then they finally made a third district, which was the tracks, Frisco tracks going north, the tracks coming out this way. All of that over into Rogers County. That was all the East District. So I was the first district commissioner. And you asked me a question, why I never did get the Silver Beaver. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it was because I was at so many different places for so long a time that they lost track of me. But I never did get it.
Well, so you were in Scouts during World War II?
I was in scouting.
Did you do victory gardens?
We had victory gardens. In fact, I dug up a space out here that was about 10 feet wide and 25 feet in that corner of my flower bed. And that was my victory garden.
So you moved in this house in the 1940?
41.
41.
December 7th, I was in the kitchen scrubbing the woodwork. Our son was 4 months old. I stopped at a little restaurant over there at 11th and 11th and Lewis to get my lunch, and I got lunch to take home to Ruth. The announcement came over there that Pearl Harbor was being attacked.
You remember that quite vividly.
Huh?
You remember that quite vividly.
I sure do. Then they came along with the draft. And of course, when it comes to winning something, I'm the last one. They had 8,500 numbers in the draft. And I think my number was 83 something. So finally they got to me. I was called up. I took my physical. The Army doctor said, "I'll take Haws." The Navy doctor spoke up and he said, "I'm sorry, I've already had him for 3 weeks." The Army doctor didn't know that the Navy doctor was a brother to my boss there at National Tank. So we already had that cooked up. So I had everything turned over to the wife, made application for support for the wife, and just waiting for my records off where I'll be going. And the Congress signed a bill that any man over 29 with small children would be reclassified to 1A. So I got kicked out of the Navy right quick. I didn't get to serve. I was ready.
So you have one child, or do you have more?
We had one child,
Okay.
4 grandchildren, 9 great-grandchildren.
Well, let's back up and let you tell me how your father came to be in Oklahoma, where he came from and how he got here.
Okay. My ancestry, like I said, was in Virginia, south of Woodstock, there on the big river. He received a 300-acre plantation from if I wasn't trying to tell you, I could tell you. Anyway, it was a big landowner that had so much land. And he got a 300-acre plantation donated to him. He died in 1811 at Hall's Crossroads. Then they had 7 children. They had 11 children. The 7th one was James Haws. Along with that group, there were Haws, Haws, and Haws. So I followed an Haws. I have more on the Haws and the Haws side than I have on my own. Mine, it came right down in a hurry. There was James Haws that married Nancy Hale. The Hale family came here in 1662. Then The next one comes along was John Haws, born in 1823. He married Nancy Russell. I got a bunch of Nancys. Then James Montgomery Haws married Margaret Malvina Easterly. And they are the ones that lived in what is now the Museum of President Johnson there in Greenville, across the street from the tailor shop. They were living there, and in the spring of 1872, they moved toward Oklahoma. They were going to Kansas first, through the Overland Trail. They were with a wagon train. But my grandfather and grandmother took the train. My grandmother was pregnant with my dad. So they got to as far as Decatur, Illinois, and had to make a stopover so my dad could be born. Then after they were there a few weeks, they went the rest of the way down to, I want to say, up in Kansas, just north of the line. They were there a while, then they moved into Payne County, at Terrellton. They had farms, my two uncles. The whole family came by wagon train down to Kansas. My great-grandfather was already in Logan County, there north of Guthrie. So they were Sooners. Then when they, as I said earlier, when they had the Cherokee Strip, my dad, I'm repeating myself, and his future brother-in-law and two other outlaws made a run. They lined up at Orlando and headed north. They all settled up around Ponca City and over around where Pawnee is. Dad came back to Guthrie. His girlfriend, Fanny Florence Ellison, lived across the road from Laurie's cemetery. Laurie was a whistle stop. Then in December the 23rd, 1893, you have to get to right. It's at the point now, I can't say 14 which year.
Your turn, Alex.
Well, I was curious because you know a lot about genealogy and history, and it's kind of a hobby for you. You're a member of what I understand, the Sons of the American Revolution, SAR?
I am a member of the Sons of the Revolution by accident.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you got involved?
Well, I've been working my genealogy since 1940. I'd pick up a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit more. And I'd heard about Sons of the American Revolution, but I didn't know how to get hold of them. My youngest grandson was a student at Union High School. He was picked as the outstanding junior high student to represent the school by the Sons of the American Revolution. So, Grandma and I went. I found out who they were. I got the man's name, and before you know it, I was a member. I came in under John Parrott. Then I had Shadrach Hale. And one that they have taken out now, which is well, anyway, I finally got 6, counting my original one, 5 different ancestors, a total of 6. After about a year, I had gone through about 2 years. I joined in 90. And in the next 2 years, I was an officer of one kind. Then in 1993, was made the leader of the Tulsa chapter, SAR.
So you were the president of the SAR?
I was the president of it. And then's when the work started. We didn't have a calling committee, and we didn't have this or that. Fred Fulkerson was the previous president, and he was a wonderful helper. He would suggest things that they wanted to do before, but they never did get known. So I stepped forward and we did them.
And what kind of things does the SAR do?
They are main project is heritage, American heritage. National headquarters are in Louisville, Kentucky. They have recently built a large library. They're trying to get all of the lost records of history. It's just teaching leadership to young men. We have an Eagle Scout program. I was chairman of the Eagle Scout program for 10 years. I turned it over to Bill Gaddis, who has had it now for about 10 years. His son, my son, a grandson, that actually was responsible for me getting into SAR, was the winner of the state program one time and received a big Eagle Scout.
Are you still an active member today?
I'm still on the judging committee of the applications. We started out giving the Tulsa chapter, we would give a eagle and $100. Now I think it's 500. The national was originally 1,000, and it is 8,000 to the winning essay and actual scouting work. We had one boy in Troop 20 that was the national winner. It was the son of Bill Gaddis, whom I sponsored into SAR and is now state chairman of Eagle Scout program. We have the ROTC program. We do a lot for the veterans. Each time that there's an honor flight, the honor guard, color guard, is out seeing them off and we're welcoming them home.
And you do that?
I haven't. I'm limited to transportation.
What kind of events do you go to today?
Well, I'm active at the meetings. I've gone with them over to Ponca City where we had the dedication for the English airmen that took training there. We give honor to the people, men that died while they were taking the training. There's also one over at Bartlesville, I think it is. I haven't made to Bartlesville. At my age, it's too hard to get out and walk.
Do you do anything at local schools or anything like that?
The SAR, the Tulsa chapter, we used to go to the neighborhood schools out at Broken Arrow. I don't think we ever went to Jenks. We went to Tulsa, several Tulsa schools, and put on a patriotic program explaining the history of George Washington. Our uniforms of the, Tulsa color guard are those of George Washington. Incidentally, the last or one of my ancestors that I have as a member of Washington's Army at Valley Forge during the winter of '83. His wife, Ellen Ryan, was supposed to be 100 years old, plus 14, 114.
Wow.
I have others that are 106, 102, 101, 100, 99.
What do you attribute your longevity to?
Huh?
What do you attribute your longevity to? What's your secret?
The Lord's given it to me. I've been blessed every day of my life. People ask me, what's your secret? I don't have a secret. It's all my life.
And genetics, if you have all of those in your background.
I'm like Will Rogers. I like my friends.
Did you ever think you would make it to 100?
Well, that was my goal.
Was it?
Yeah,
Now what's your goal?
120.
120. Okay. I hope I'm here to see it.
Well, you should be. You're just a youngster.
But what's a typical day like for you today at 100? What's a typical day in your like for you at 100? What's a day in the life?
My typical life right now,
Typical day. Mm-hmm.
I get up in the morning.
What time?
Well, it depends. I used to get up at 6 o'clock every morning. My son, the night my wife died, started staying with me at night. He lives out near 31st and Garnett. He and his family, his wife, his daughter and grandson. He stays with me at night and leaves in the morning. I'm here alone all day long, but if we're up late watching a Thunder game or the Shock game, I may not get up till 7:30, but on Saturday mornings, he likes to sleep late, so I may not get up until 8 o'clock. I lay in there.
So when you're here by yourself, what do you do?
When I'm here by myself, well, before I get out of bed, I take my leg stretching exercises, my arm exercise. You can see my weights that I take when I'm out here, both arm and leg. I got a cardio glide over there in the corner I used to use. You notice I said used to. I'll sit here and look at it and think, I ought to go over there and pull, but I don't. Anyway, after I get my walker to stable myself, walk to the front door, get the paper, bring it in, go in and fix my breakfast, come out, eat breakfast. By that time the news is on. When I get through with that, I'll come in and get my paper. During the day, I'll work on my genealogy. That's why I got all my stuff down here. I had an office upstairs that I built over the garage. It goes up with a folding down stairway. I had 2 file card cases full of records, 2 bookcases full. I brought everything downstairs so I would have it here. So I had to put it in these little storage boxes. I've got one over there that takes care of all my national tank, my different companies. They have changed hands so many times I can't keep up with them. ABB is the last one that is paying me. I have to keep those metal boxes like that one, this one over here. There's one up here on the record player. one on the corner. I've got another one out in the computer room. I had to bring everything down. So it's kind of hard for me to keep up with which one's which. That one's all my things that I have contracts with, insurance, paid bills, things like that. Then the rest of it is all more or less genealogy.
And you have a computer room?
Oh, yeah.
Do you use the computer?
I use it to play Saw. I'll show you my book that I wrote in 2005. I put together, the kids said, "Grandpa, tell us some of the stories that you have in your life." I have it on my Haws line. I have a cousin at Greenville, Tennessee, that has the same thing on the Easterly family. The Easterly farm has been in the same ownership for over 100 years. They're at Finchum. Yeah. Oh, and then
Mossheim?
Moshine, is that how you pronounce it?
Mosh.
Hiem.
That's where my mother-in-law's from. Mossheim.
Then she's familiar with Oven Creek
I'll ask her.
Church.
Okay.
See? One of my uncles donated that church. That's home country. But I haven't been there.
You need to go.
You asked me about my future. I'm beginning to get interested more. I've asked my son if he will schedule vacation so that we can go back to Greenville next summer sometime.
Good.
That's kind of on your bucket list.
Huh?
You've got that on your bucket list.
That's on my goal.
Yep.
So what's the biggest invention in your lifetime? What do you think?
What was the biggest invention?
Mm-hmm.
They're still coming. I learned to drive a Model T Ford, and when my dad would be going out to service certain areas, and of course they weren't paved roads. It was usually a single rut, and you'd have to get out of the, when you did have a car, the wagons and everything went down the middle of the road. I learned how to drive a Model T Ford by steering it in the ruts. Now they've got cars that you tell it, go so-and-so, and lean back. You don't do anything. I'm scared of them. I want to wheel. And even Bible prophecy. You remember there's one place in the Bible that tells about the birds flying with fire coming out of their tails. That was your jets. There's been so many things since the horse and buggy.
Well, you said earlier that you had an experience you were going to talk about that was kind of, you were tell us later, that was kind of mysterious. Did you remember that?
The what?
You told us earlier when we first started talking that you had an experience that you were going to tell us about later that you kind of was a little bit of a mysterious experience.
Well, I've been cut open a lot of times. That may have been one of them. I started out with after I had a few hernias, a ruptured appendix, and it was on a Thursday before Easter. The doctor thought it was intestinal flu. On Saturday, I was hurting so bad I went back to the doctor. Found my doctor in the office. He said, just a minute, and he called the surgeon in. He says, I think he might have appendicitis. And the surgeon said, well, let's put him in the hospital for observation over the weekend. I said, My son had already had a hernia operation. I said, I've got my own surgeon. So my doctor called him and explained what it was. He said, get to St. Francis and don't go home. It's another time I disobeyed. I went out to National Tank Company, got my checkbook and my box that I had my personal items in. Wife drove 60 miles an hour down Riverside Drive getting out to St. Francis. They had already closed down the operating room, but they were in the process of reactivating it. It was just a matter of minutes, you might say, before I was in there on the operating room. For 3 days, they didn't expect me to live. They worried about it. At that time, at National, I was doing all the collecting. I'd have my big list of people that were behind that I'd be writing on. And at that time, I was assistant secretary. So the secretary, our general counsel, would bring, a little bit later on, would bring my paperwork out there, and I would dictate the collection letters to him. His secretary would have to write them. Then, more hernias. I had a ruptured gallbladder. I don't have normal things. Then it was about the size of a small egg. The doctor said it was the largest stone in there that he had ever seen. I've still got the darn thing in there, but it shrivels about like that now.
And yet you're still here.
I'm still here. And then in 2011, I think it was, I had a triple bypass. And it was a new style. It was the beating heart. They didn't put me on a machine and shut my heart down. They used my own heart. And when they were doing the angioplasty or whatever it is, coming up here checking the arteries, the doctor said, Mr. Haws, I was watching. He said, Mr. Haws, you're going to have to lean back. We can't see what we're doing.
You were pretty curious about it.
I was serious. I wanted to see what was happening to my heart. Anyway, Dr. Miller went ahead and operated, and they did a new technique. Before, on surgeries like that, they always took the artery out between the knee and the ankle. Well, they took it out of my thigh. And I didn't have one bit of problem with it, where other people always had problem with the other. Well, anyway, make a long story short, I've got a zip. I'm going to have to put a zipper in next time. It goes from here down to the pelvis bone. When they got up to the navel, they just went around it, made a detour.
Well,
That's why I say I have been blessed every day of my life.
do you have a motto or philosophy that you live by?
Live each day the best you can. That's why I go over to senior center. I'll go over there 2-3 times a week. You ask what I did during the day. I play cards, dominoes, different kinds of card games. We have a place to walk and the gymnasium. Every Tuesday we have a lunch or a breakfast of some kind. On Fridays we have a grumpy man's breakfast. Women are invited.
What's a grumpy man's breakfast?
Biscuits and gravy.
But what do you mean by a grumpy man's breakfast?
Well, they call it a grumpy breakfast. We added a man to it.
Okay.
We play pitch. We have our own band.
Have dances?
Huh?
Do you dance?
Yeah. When we have parties, I dance with the coordinator of our unit at my 99th birthday and again at my 100th birthday.
Wow.
They were both held at the same place over at the Western Country Diner on Sheridan. We had about 76 for my 99th and 120 for my 100.
Well, did you and your wife dance when you were?
We belonged to ballroom dancing. We belonged to square dance. We belonged to the Woodland Country Club, which was out near Mohawk. They had a 9-hole golf course, swimming pool. We were on the entertainment committee out there. We used to belong to 2 bridge clubs. There's another story. Oh,
Well, did she work? Did Ruth work?
she worked for about 2 months after she came to Tulsa. Then she decided that it wasn't worth it. I started out at $100 a month, and I started getting raises about every 2-3 weeks, 2 weeks or a month. And she said, "Well, you're making enough now. We won't need mine." We'd go to the 15-cent movie. There was the cozy down on the overpass of the train track, and then the gym was back at about 6th and Main. We had the Ritz, Orpheum, Rialto, Criterion.
Drive-ins?
Huh?
Any drive-ins? Drive-in movies?
Yeah, I used to go to the movie out on Admiral Twin.
And did you go dancing at the Cain's Ballroom?
I've never been there.
Well, Tulsa's changed a lot in 60, 70 years.
It has. I had one experience during my scouting years. One of our previous scout right now, I can't remember his name, has caught wings, but we were his guests at a war bond rally down at the old Brady Theater. Red Skelton was the entertainment. So, and he's as funny off the stage as it is on. We had a lot of famous women singers, high up Navy and Army officers. But anyway, I got acquainted with both Red and Edna and got their autograph on the 8.5 by 14 worksheet for the stagehands.
Pretty neat.
Been a good life.
Well, one thing we didn't ask you, and this is going back again, but what did you do for fun as a child? What kind of, did you play any particular games or?
And in school, I was too busy working, schoolwork. I did a lot of woodwork. I made one of my projects was a secretary desk that had folded the lid down. It's out in the computer room. Anyway.
Still have it.
Huh?
You still have it.
Yeah. And I got one upstairs identical to it that I made in the kitchen out of oak. Made it for my granddaughter, and the wife talked me into painting it white.
Now, did you have any family traditions or family types of things that you used to do during the holidays?
Yeah, whenever they have the 89ers Day in April over at Guthrie, the Haws and the Ellison always had a family reunion. We'd meet there at Highland Park, have a picnic. Of course, had to go to the parade. In fact, I just put a bunch of parade pictures away a couple of weeks ago.
Well, when history is written, what do you want it to say about you?
Well, I think I've had a full life. It could end any time, but I don't want it to. There's more to come. I want to see what's happening. That's why I've got a goal of 20 years. And I was talking to someone the other day, I said, when I was showing them my letter that I got from the superintendent of schools from Carnegie, I figured out that would fall, the time would fall within my goal. It would be a year earlier so I could go out and celebrate 100 years from graduation.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a different question.
People might think I'm crazy, but
yeah.
In the biblical times, they lived up to 800 years. But of course, they had a different calendar.
You said you want to see what's going to happen over the next 20 years. What do you think you will see?
I want it to be a surprise. But I know one thing, with the growth of the population of the earth, we're going to have something to make up for all the food that has to be grown. We're going to be on a chemical diet. People are going to live older, just like now. We have, in this area, we have about 4 or 6 that become 100 years old. And then I was telling the other day, and you already knew, there's been 1,500 or older people died since the 1st of September in northeast Oklahoma. From 105 down to 100. And years ago, when people got to be 40 years old, they were old people. Now they're just kids.
40 is the old 100.
Huh?
40 is the old 100.
40 was the old 100.
Anything else you want to tell us before we cut it off? Shut down?
Really?
Really?
Well, if I did, I'd feel like I was bragging. And I don't want it to feel that way.
Well, it wouldn't. If there's something you want to say it.
No.
What else is on your bucket list besides going to Tennessee?
Well, having birthdays every year. Having big birthdays. And we had a lot of fun.
When did you give up driving?
It's been about 10 years. No, I was still driving in 2001. I woke up that morning, I had kind of a pain in my chest. I called my doctor. He was in Broken Arrow. He said, come right out. We heard out. He listened to my heart. He said, I'm going to call an ambulance and send you over to Southcrest. I said, don't do that. Why? He said, you're going to have a heart bypass. I said, well, I drove 17 miles getting out of here. I could still drive 5 miles over to Southcrest. You don't need to call an ambulance. So I drove over there, walked in the emergency room. They were waiting for me in the wheelchair. Took me right up to, they were in there checking with me. I never did make the admittance desk. Pretty soon, my wife and son had to go fill out all the paper. We'd been going there as a Southcrest. I was in there 4 days. People came by that afternoon and visited with me.
I think maybe stubborn streak is a secret to living to 100.
If I can do it, others can do it. They have to have a goal. I've got, you know what mine is, 120
120.
or 119. Have I entertained you enough?
You've been great. I thank you for sharing your stories with us. You're great. Thank you.
I share it with a lot of people.